Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of AI.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, how AI is learning to understand videos
Okay.
like a human would.
Mhm.
You guys sent us this paper
Right.
on a system called MM-Narrator, and it's tackling something pretty ambitious, I got to say.
Yeah.
Generating audio descriptions
Right.
for videos of any length.
Wow.
Not just those short clips we see,
Mm-hmm.
but like
Yeah.
full-length movies, documentaries, you name it.
That's a big leap forward for sure.
Right.
It is, yeah. What makes MM-Narrator so interesting
Yeah.
is it doesn't just describe what's happening
Like
visually. Like in each scene, it
Okay.
actually tries to follow the whole storyline.
the overarching...
Yeah, the character interactions.
Oh, wow.
Even those subtle things.
Interesting.
They might only make sense,
Right.
like way later in the video.
It's like having an AI companion,
Yeah.
watching the movie with you.
Right.
But instead of grabbing popcorn, it's like whispering those insightful commentaries
Exactly.
in your ear.
Yeah, it's a great
I
analogy.
like that.
Yeah. The paper talks about how MM-Narrator uses this combination of what they call short-term and long-term memory to keep track of everything,
Okay.
so it can recognize characters when they reappear
Right.
much later in the video.
Even if they've changed their clothes or something.
Oh, yeah.
Like their hair's different.
Right. Yeah, even if they look different.
Okay.
Or their names haven't been mentioned for a while.
So that long-term memory part, that's what's really got me thinking.
Yeah.
Is it basically building
Mm-hmm.
a mini database of characters as it watches?
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
You're on the right track.
Okay.
It's keeping track of not just their names, but also like their visual appearance,
Right.
how they're related to other characters, their relationships and how they behave throughout the story.
Interesting.
That way it can keep the descriptions consistent
Yeah.
and avoid getting confused if, say, a character is only referred to as he for a few scenes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
But it can't just be relying on dialogue, right?
Absolutely not. No. MM-Narrator leverages what we call multimodal information.
Multimodal.
That means it's not just seeing the images, it's
Right.
also processing the dialogue
Right.
from the subtitles
Yeah.
and even listening for audio cues.
Oh, so it's listening too.
It's listening.
Wow.
All of that helps create a much richer understanding
I see.
of what's happening.
So it's really like
Yeah.
getting the full sensory experience,
Yeah.
just like we would when we're watching.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm guessing this is a big step up
Yes.
from how those older AI systems tried to do audio descriptions, right?
You're absolutely right. It's a huge advancement. Previous approaches often struggled,
Right.
especially with these longer videos, because they relied too heavily on just the dialogue
Yeah.
to figure out who is who.
Right. Just the words.
But imagine how that could lead to mistakes.
Well, yeah.
If a character's name isn't mentioned for a while.
Right.
Or if there are multiple characters with similar voices.
Yeah, I could see that being a problem.
Right. It's a big problem.
Huge problem.
Yeah.
But MM-Narrator, with its multimodal approach and this memory system,
Right.
it's able to overcome that.
Exactly. The memory's key.
Okay.
But the researchers also explored another interesting approach.
Hmm.
They borrowed an idea from a system called AutoAD2.
Right.
They introduced what they call an external character bank.
An external thought.
Character bank, okay?
Think of it as a reference guide
All right.
with information about the characters,
Okay.
like their names, relationships, maybe even some key personality traits. So it's like giving the AI
Yeah.
like a cheat sheet
Kind of, yeah.
to help keep everyone straight.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
And the results were pretty impressive.
Interesting.
Having this extra information
Yeah.
really helped MM-Narrator when
Yeah.
it came to identifying characters
Right.
and keeping the descriptions consistent
Makes sense.
throughout the video.
So it seems like the more information the AI has,
Yeah.
the better it can understand
Yeah.
all the little nuances of the story.
Exactly.
But how does it actually learn to use all this information
Wow.
to generate these detailed descriptions?
Right.
Is it just fed, tons and tons of data?
Well, that's what's really intriguing about MM-Narrator.
Okay.
It uses this technique called multimodal
Okay.
in-context learning,
In context.
or what they call MMICL for short.
MICL. Got it.
Instead of training it
Okay.
on these huge data sets,
Yeah.
they use a few carefully chosen examples to show the system how to generate descriptions.
So it's more about like quality than quantity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Right.
The researchers found
Okay.
that the most effective examples weren't the most complex scenes. Simple, clear examples actually worked best.
Wow. That's counterintuitive.
It is, yeah.
Why would simpler examples be more helpful for AI?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It really gets at the heart of how this type of AI learns.
Okay.
Think of it like this. It's almost like teaching a kid to read, you know?
Right.
You don't start them off with Shakespeare or anything like that.
No.
You got to give them those simple sentences first.
Yeah, like see spot run.
Exactly. Build that foundation.
Bring that base understanding.
Yeah.
And then they can move on to more complex stuff.
Right. And that's what the paper emphasizes.
Okay.
They found that by using clear and simple examples, it helped MM-Narrator to actually generalize its learning, which means it can apply that knowledge to, like, tons of videos.
So it's not just copying what it saw.
Yeah.
It's actually understanding
Exactly.
the underlying principle.
The principles of audio description.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. But now I'm really curious about, the results.
Sure.
How did MM-Narrator actually perform when they put it to the test?
Well, they used this benchmark data set called Made Evil Named.
Made Evil Name.
Which is specifically designed to evaluate audio description systems.
Okay.
So it's not enough to just have an AI generate text. We have to figure out, like, how does it compare to other systems?
Right.
How does it actually stack up?
So it's like a head-to-head
Yeah.
competition.
Yeah, you can think of it that way.
What kind of contenders did they have in this?
So they compared MM-Narrator
Okay.
to a few different approaches.
Okay.
Some of these systems are what we call fine-tuned.
Fine-tuned, okay.
They've been trained on massive amounts of data.
So those are the ones that have been like prepping for a marathon.
Exactly. It's like marathon training for AIs.
Got it.
And then you've got the others that are what we call training free.
Training free.
Like MM-Narrator.
Interesting.
Which is more of a sprinter.
A sprinter. Okay.
It's relying on its inherent abilities.
Uh-huh.
And just a few key examples.
So it's like the underdog.
It is, kind of.
Going up against the heavyweights.
You could say that.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
So how did it do?
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
Well,
even without all of the super intense training data, MM-Narrator actually outperformed
No way.
a lot of the fine-tuned systems.
Really?
When it came to those traditional metrics we talked about.
Yeah.
Roger, O.
Okay. And spice.
Wow. So it's proving that sometimes, like, less is more.
Right.
That a clever approach can be just as good
Absolutely.
as all that data crunching.
Sometimes better.
That must have been pretty surprising for some people. Oh, yeah. I think it turned some heads in the research community.
Okay. But, as we said, it's not all about those traditional metrics.
It's not just about matching words.
Right. What really matters
Exactly.
is how MM-Narrator performs on those more nuanced aspects of storytelling that Segival was designed for.
Yeah.
So we want the AI to not just spit out facts.
Yeah.
We want it to capture, the essence of the story.
Emotional beats.
All the things that make a human narrator so good.
Exactly. That's what makes it compelling.
Okay, so what did the AI critic think?
All right. So Segival, it gives these scores on different aspects of storytelling. Like originality, consistency, coherence, diversity of language, and specificity.
Wow. That's a lot to consider.
It is.
So it's really looking at the big picture.
It is. It's looking at the big picture.
Not just like individual words.
It's going beyond that. It's looking at how the whole thing comes together.
So what did it say?
Was MM-Narrator able to hold its own against the humans?
Yeah, like was it any good?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Especially when they use GPT-4V.
That visual component.
Right, the visual analysis part of GPT-4.
Okay.
MM-Narrator scored incredibly well
Okay.
on a lot of those aspects. In fact, some of the scores were almost as good as human-written descriptions.
So it's basically saying it's getting pretty darn close to
it is
human-level performance when it comes to storytelling.
Yes, it's really impressive.
That's amazing.
But there was one area where even with GPT-4V, MM-Narrator didn't quite reach that human level.
Oh, really? What was it?
And that was in the diversity of language used.
The diversity of language.
So human narrators, with all their years of experience, they still have an edge when it comes to crafting those truly diverse descriptions.
More colorful language.
Yes, exactly.
More synonyms, different ways of phrasing things.
Right. They have a more nuanced sense of style.
I see. So even with all this progress, there's still something uniquely human
there is
about language.
That's hard to replicate.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's really complex.
Yeah, but overall it sounds like
Yeah.
MM-Narrator is a pretty big step forward.
That's a huge step forward.
For AI audio description.
Absolutely.
You know what I find really fascinating, though? Is how this research highlights the importance of evaluation.
It's so important.
Because we could have the most brilliant AI in the world, but if we don't have the tools to assess it, if we can't figure out how well it's doing,
how do we know?
How do we know if it's actually successful? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So developing tools like Segival is essential.
So we need ways to measure.
Yeah.
And to be able to give feedback.
Exactly. And that feedback loop.
That process of evaluating and refining and pushing those boundaries further.
Pushing the boundaries?
Yeah.
That's what leads to these big breakthroughs.
Yeah, that's what leads to the breakthroughs.
And speaking of breakthroughs, you mentioned earlier that MM-Narrator did really well when they used GPT-4V.
Right.
That visual component.
Yeah.
I'm curious, why was that so crucial?
That's a great question. It really shows how important it is to have that strong visual understanding.
Right.
When you're trying to describe something visually.
Yeah, you got to be able to see it.
GPT-4V is really good at analyzing visual information.
Yeah.
It can pick out all those details.
Okay.
So when MM-Narrator had access to that, it was able to create even more accurate and rich descriptions.
So it's not just about hearing the dialogue.
Exactly.
It's about actually seeing what's happening in the scene.
Yeah.
Understanding all the context.
The emotions, the expression.
Little visual cues.
All of that.
That a human narrator would pick up on.
Right. It's giving the AI those extra tools.
It's like giving it a second set of eyes.
A second set of eyes that can see like humans do.
Incredible. I have to ask.
Sure.
What does this mean for accessibility?
That's one of the most exciting aspects of this, really. Imagine a world where any video, no matter how long or complex, could be automatically described in a way that's both engaging and accurate for people who are blind or visually impaired.
That would be game-changing.
It would be revolutionary.
Yeah, and it's not just about accessibility, right?
Absolutely not. Think about language learning.
Oh, right.
These descriptions could help people understand content in other languages.
Or even if you're multitasking.
Yeah.
You can have the AI give you like a quick summary.
Right, like a play-by-play of what's happening.
It's like having a personal narrator.
It is, like a personal AI assistant.
For everything.
Right, for all your video content.
But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
We've seen the amazing progress.
Okay.
But like with any new technology, there are always challenges. What are some of the things that researchers are still trying to figure out?
That's what we'll be talking about in the final part of our deep dive. All right, so we've seen how AI is learning to tell a story visually.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
But where do we go from here?
Right, what are the next big challenges?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles, and the paper talks about this, is this whole challenge of factuality.
Factuality.
We've talked about creating these really engaging descriptions.
Right.
But they have to be accurate, too.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We don't want an AI just confidently narrating the wrong events.
Exactly. That wouldn't be very helpful.
How do they even begin to tackle that?
It's a tough one. Yeah. You know, even the current evaluation methods, even Segival, they don't really fully address factual accuracy. It's tricky to measure.
Yeah, I bet.
The researchers suggest that future work might need to incorporate AI models that have a deeper understanding of the real world.
So something like GPT-4V, which is already analyzing the visuals.
Right. Could it also act as a fact checker?
Almost like a built-in editor.
Exactly. GPT-4V could compare the audio description it's generating to its own visual understanding of what's happening.
I see.
If there's a mismatch, it could flag it, for review.
Hold on, something's not right here.
Yeah, hold on, this doesn't add up.
That's pretty smart.
And beyond factuality, there's also the challenge of, timing. Knowing when to insert those audio descriptions.
Right.
How to avoid interrupting dialogue.
Right. Or sound effects.
Yeah, sound effects. That's important.
Yeah, you don't want to step on those.
There's a whole other layer.
Yeah. It's a delicate balance, right?
It is, yeah.
You don't want the AI to be too intrusive.
Right.
But you also want to make sure it's providing, like, the right amount of information at the right time.
It's almost like composing a piece of music.
Okay.
I gotta find that rhythm that allows the narration to flow seamlessly with everything else that's going on.
So it has to understand not just the words and the visuals.
Right, not just the basic stuff.
But like
the emotional beats.
The emotional beats.
The pacing.
The pacing, yeah, and like
the subtle cues.
All those little nuances.
Yeah, all of that.
This is really complex. It makes you wonder, like, what's the future of all this?
Yeah.
Will AI narrators eventually become so good that we can't tell the difference?
I think that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Researchers are trying to figure that out.
Right.
It really makes you think about, like, what is creativity?
Right. What does it mean?
What's the role of AI in art?
How do we relate to these new forms of storytelling?
Yeah, it's a big philosophical question.
It is.
But one thing is clear.
Okay.
AI is changing the way we experience these things.
It's changing how we watch videos, right?
Yeah, it's changing everything.
And like MM-Narrator, these breakthroughs are really pushing the limits of what we thought was possible.
It's an exciting time to be following this.
Yeah, this has been really interesting.
It has.
Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
It's been a journey.
Yeah.
Lots of surprises and insights.
Absolutely.
And it definitely leaves us with a lot to think about.
Yeah, lots to ponder.
As we go into this new era of AI storytelling.
The new era!
Until next time.
Yeah.
Happy viewing, everybody.